I'm Anne Buckley. I'm a lecturer in German and Translation Studies at the University of Leeds.
And I'm Rob Freeman. I'm the Craven and the First World War Project Officer based at Craven Museum in Skipton.
And our project started with this. This book was found lying in a shoebox in a storeroom in Skipton Library. It's a book that was written by 50 of the German officers who were imprisoned in Skipton in World War I. And it contains diary entries, sketches, poems and accounts of life in the camp from the German perspective.
So just to give you a bit of background about the camp itself, it was originally built as a training base for the Bradford Powell's Regiment in 1915 and was subsequently used by a number of other regiments during the First World War until 1918 when it became a prisoner of war camp for captured German soldiers. After the German prisoners returned home in 1919, the camp was dismantled and for nearly 100 years the history of Rakeswood Camp remained hidden. Very few people knew of its existence, until now that is.
Okay, so our project started with staff at the University of Leeds in the German department translating or starting to translate the book Kriegsgefangen in Skipton, and the Ignite funding allowed us to have student interns working on the project. So we've had 12 student interns up until now involved. We've also involved members of the local community, so we've got the sixth formers from South Craven School involved, we've got 3 members of the local community, and we've got the Settle U3A group involved now too. Okay, and then we linked up with Rob at Craven Museum, who leads the Craven and the First World War project, and we started to do collaborative work.
Yeah, so the Craven and the First World War project is a Heritage Lottery funded project. We initially received funding for 3 years and our funding ran out earlier this year. So it's really through our partnership with the university that we were able to apply for additional funding from HLF, which we were successfully awarded, and that will take us through to May 2019, allowing us to do the following activities. So we've already started off with an archaeological dig, which took place during the summer, and that was on the site of the camp, and that was working with professional archaeologists and students from 6 local secondary schools. We're also going to be launching a new website in January next year that will coincide with the 100th anniversary of when the first German prisoners arrived in Skipton. And we're also going to be including a 3D virtual model, which we're actually working in partnership with Leeds Beckett University on developing that model. Another project which we're working on at the moment is a cartoon project. We're working with young people from Skipton Library to create comic strip drawings depicting life inside the camp and based on some of the stories from the book. And then finally, in the new year, we're going to be working on a film project. So that'll be working with asylum seekers and refugees to explore the theme of arriving in a new place from foreign shores, and we'll be comparing their impressions of Skipton with those of the prisoners from 100 years ago.
Okay, so the project has taken me to Freiburg, to the German Military Archive. I found various items from the camp there, including 2 editions of the camp newspaper. I've also started collaborating with historians in universities in the UK and in Germany, and I'm giving a paper next month at the University of Cambridge about the project, about the camp. The project has become truly international. It has really taken us all over the world. It's amazing. We've got contact, for example, with Ernesto Brucker in Buenos Aires. He is the son of one of the prisoners who was in Skipton, Georg Brucker. Georg Brucker was repatriated with the others in October 1919. He went on to work for a German international bank, and they sent him to work in Argentina, where he married and stayed there. So Ernesto has been born and brought up in Argentina.
And earlier this year we welcomed the granddaughter of one of the camp interpreters, Julian Snee, and she came all the way from her home in Australia to Skipton during the summer.
And then we've got the amazing story of Fritz Sachsse. Fritz Sachsse is one of the 2 named authors of the book, and he was involved in the siege of Tsingtao, which was a German colony in China, hence the beer, Tsingtao beer, that's where the beer comes from. Tsingtao was captured by the Japanese, and Sachsse ended up in a POW camp in Fukuoka. And then he had an amazing escape over 2 years that took him through Shanghai. He ended up in New York, then in the Orkney Isles, then in the Isle of Man, and then finally in Skipton.
We've also managed to identify 910 of the German prisoners through the International Red Cross records, and we have got their addresses in Germany, and we are slowly starting to make contact with the descendants of those prisoners.
And closer to home, the project has taken us into the Yorkshire Dales. When the camp was dismantled in 1920, the barrack huts were put to use as village halls, a gun and rifle club. A local garage in Skipton has still got some trusses in the roof, for example. It's also taken us 10 miles down the road to Keighley. In 1919, there was the Spanish flu pandemic, and 47 of the men from the camp in Skipton, the Germans, they died of Spanish flu, and their funerals took place in Keighley, 10 miles down the road from Skipton. So we've been in contact with the Keighley Library and the local history archives down there.
Finally, just to summarise, really through the project we have already rewritten the story of the camp back into the history of Skipton. The community have been really keen to get involved. They've been very excited by the project and have been following the progress very closely.
So the next steps for us, we're planning to publish the translation of Kriegsgefangene in Skipton to coincide with the departure of the Germans in October 2019. We're also working on another book about the camp and the stories behind the camp. So in a way, we're helping to carry out the wishes of Fritz Sachsse, who wrote the foreword to the book, and he said, "So geht denn das Buch in die Welt hinaus."
Which means, let this book go out into the world.
So, Prost!
Prost.